And we're live. It is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021, 5:01 p.m., day one of Trump impeachment trial, part deux. See, that's one in English, two in French. Multilingual. It is a dog shirt day. And I think I had more fun today than Bruce Castor did, but we're going to talk about that because it is much more fun to watch somebody make an ass of himself than it is to be the person making an ass of himself. So, I have also figured out the perfect activity for listening to an impeachment trial. I wish I had known about this last year, which is going for a long walk while just around. I walked for 6 miles listening.
6 miles?
6 miles listening to the Democratic.
3 hours of walking.
Two and a bit, yeah. I walked at 3 miles an hour. Anyway, so that is what I'm going to do for this whole impeachment trial. I'm just going to walk around the District of Columbia. We are not allowed to have fun anymore, but in lieu of fun, our Costa Rica Bureau has been following the impeachment trial. And Paul Rosenzweig, welcome back to the show. Did you have a better day than Bruce Castor?
Well, I think most people did, but I'll make you this following bet. I don't know the man at all, never met him, but I bet you he doesn't think he had that bad a day.
I think that's right. I think you only talk that way if you think you're being folksy and you're kind of rocking it, and you don't know that you're actually, he's got that, I'm just a country lawyer thing. And he just doesn't know that it's, I'm just an idiot.
Yeah, I think that's right. Many lawyers, especially in criminal law, especially in state and local courts, are used to winging it because criminal law at the state level is often the dirtiest and most, just grind it through kind of stuff. I mean, federal criminal law is a huge step up, right? And then appellate law and administrative law. But at the state and local level, at the criminal trial level, it's just process, and people are used to taking the file, walking in, and making an argument. And that's what he struck me as.
So I totally agree with that, except for the part where they make an argument, because. He must have talked for about 45 minutes, and there wasn't an argument there that I could discern. There was let's praise the Senate, and let's praise senators, and let's talk about, let's be folksy, and let's, say some things that we're going to talk about later, I don't want to speak about too much legalese, but we have all this stuff about jurisdiction in the brief. This is the jurisdictional argument, dude. It's actually like his partner, who's, when I last checked, was still speaking, shown, he's making a real argument.
Yes.
Castor never quite got there was more winging it than there was argument. Do you agree?
I think so. I mean, look, it's a thin case file. He doesn't really have a good legal argument or a good factual argument. He was hired a week before he had to show up. He could have done better, but this is not a formula for success.
Right.
For anybody. I mean, even the best lawyer in America would have an awful tough time in this position today. And Castor's not the best lawyer in America by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, isn't this like the logical conclusion of what the entire administration was, which was the inability to get people that had any type of expertise or ability or intelligence to like serve in the administration, because the people just passed because it was like the death knell for careers. And like, I just feel like this is it. And like, sometimes, mate, I don't know. Like, what do you think he's getting out of it? Like, what do you like if he doesn't pay his legal bills, do you like, it's not even money. So like, it's just like
notoriety, right? I mean, really, to be fair to Trump's first impeachment, his legal team there wasn't bad, right? I mean, they had a poor argument. Are you coughing because you're actually coughing, Ben? Or...
No, I think that Ben has like
choked
on some whiskey.
I'm actually coughing because I choked on some whiskey because of a tweet that was sent my way moments ago that says, at Benjamin Wittes appears to be wearing a T-shirt of a hairy chest, which caused me to inhale a little bit of whiskey. To my Twitter interlocutor who just made me burst out laughing, it is not a hairy chest. It is a dog shirt. And you are clearly new to this here community, so I will inform you that dog shirts are part of the show, kind of like tech glitches. You were saying, Paul, I agree with you. The team was pretty competent in the last go-around, although some of the team was better than others.
Yes, clearly.
Pat Philbin and Jay Sekulow actually did a much...
Cipollone, they're good lawyers. They had a bad case. On the other hand, they won. So I mean, who am I to say they had a bad case when they win? You take your victories anyway, and by that measure, perhaps Castor and Schoen aren't that bad either, because looks like they're going to win, right?
Well, but this one, you want to talk about a rigged system in a highly polarized environment where you have a 2/3 majority requirement for conviction and almost perfect party unity. You're signing up on the winning side when you sign up for the defense.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. Actually, I want to spend some of today attempting to redefine winning and losing. I mean, granted, the Constitution gives us the formal parameters, which is that if it's not 2/3, 67 votes, it's not a victory. But in the last impeachment, Mitt Romney was the first senator in the history of America to vote for principle over party and to vote to convict a president of his own party. And it didn't happen to Andrew Johnson, didn't happen to Bill Clinton. Mitt Romney was the first. My definition of victory here is if we get to 8, 10, 12 Republicans who do the right thing.
8, 10, or 12. Those seem to be very different numbers to me.
Well, I'm going to declare the victory if I get over 5, but I would love to get to 12.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with you. I think there are gradations of victory. Mm-hmm. 67 is total victory, and you get the prize, which is disqualification.
Right.
One Republican enables you to say bipartisan, but it doesn't enable you to say it very well. Right? 5 lets you say, hey, is kind of like the impeachment vote in the House. Hey, there's a measurable percentage of the Republican caucus, in this case 10%, that went against the party line. And I think that's a pretty substantial statement, actually. All Democrats plus 10% of Republicans. That's meaningfully bipartisan. Once you move in that spectrum in between those two, I think you're grading up victory. I'm very curious to see what the vote on today's motion will be, because 55...
I'm looking at your tweet stream here, and somebody named P says it was 56-44.
Oh, okay. So that's
I don't know. We're not watching that right now.
Somebody else says 51-49.
And somebody says Cassidy from Louisiana voted to proceed. Well, that's interesting.
Okay, so that's that's one more than they got last time around. Which
that we can call that the Castor effect.
Yes. So one thing we haven't talked about is the argument that the other side made, the impeachment managers, which I thought was surprisingly good, actually. And I'm curious for your thoughts on. So people keep talking about Jamie Raskin, but I thought the runaway star of it, frankly, was Joe Neguse of Colorado, a member whom I have not previously been aware. What did you think of the manager's presentation, and what deficiencies did you find, or elegances did you find?
Well, first off, I want to thank you because I've been wondering all day how to pronounce Neguse.
I was just going to say that when you said, I think that's right. But I was also, it's like half my life is coming on the show and finding out how to pronounce things.
If I say it wrong, I'm going to say Neguse for the rest of this show. And if that's wrong, Congressman Neguse, I blame Wittes, okay?
Yeah, well, I blame C-SPAN, because C-SPAN Radio, because on C-SPAN Radio, the announcer called him Joe Neguse. And I just want to say, Congressman Neguse, first of all, you should come on in lieu of fun and talk about your work on and how you got to be a 32-year-old impeachment manager. But secondly, if I'm mispronouncing your Negusian name, you should blame C-SPAN and tell them to get it right.
Yeah, well, okay, so first off, we've now consented that for the rest of today it's Neguse, and perhaps that's even what it really is. I thought that both Neguse and Raskin did a really, really fine job. I loved personally the emotionalism of Congressman Raskin's approach, and I loved that he is essentially rubbing the Republicans' noses in the facts of the case. If you accept the hypothesis that we're all working under, which is that this is not going to result in the conviction and subsequent disqualification of Donald Trump.
Sarah's here.
Then, what?
Sorry, just didn't mean to interrupt. But yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Right. If we accept that as true, oh, good. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, guys.
Go Nats.
Sarah found out that apparently there was an impeachment trial that started today.
Yeah, it was, and it's still on, so I had to wait till it was over. I was listening to the votes.
Okay. So if we accept that we're not going to get a conviction, or that's a working premise, then what is the Democrats' objective here? And I think the Democrats' objective here is twofold, right? The first, and the one that I think that Congressman Neguse spoke to, is to lay out this case for history, right? So that scholars and historians 50 years from now will know what happened. The second, which is what I think Congressman Raskin spoke to, is to lay this case out for politics, to provide a vehicle for people like Sarah to do ads in the next cycle that make it abundantly clear that the Republican Party has become a party of nonsense and has lost its moral way. And so I loved both of their presentations because I thought it spoke to both of the necessities. Neither of them, I think, was likely to persuade very many Republicans to change what they're voting because their minds are made up. And so they didn't try to do that. They tried to embarrass them so that, in 2022 and 2024, they have no refuge to hide behind so that Ted Cruz can't say, I don't know what was happening. And they were writing for, the Professor Frank Bowmans of 50 years from now, who will be writing the next history of impeachment. So I loved what both of them did.
So, Sarah, before I ask you about your sense of Raskin, Neguse, and Cicilline, I want to just give you a chance to make fun of Mr. Castor which I have a feeling you're itching to do.
What was that?
And it was, so here are some options, and maybe we will put it in the poll. Option 1, what was that? Question mark.
I was
Castor.
pretty sure that Ashton.
I think it's an acid trip.
No, I thought that Ashton Kutcher was gonna like run onto the Senate floor and be like, "Punked! I got you guys." Because I was like, "This is not real." Like, this guy showed up, like, not prepared to run an impeachment trial, and he was like, "I'm just gonna wing this. I'm like a 60-year-old white guy. I got this. No big deal."
Did you see Matt Gaetz' tweet about it?
Well, I saw that he tweeted Dershowitz, who was on Newsmax, just being like,
No, this is better than that. Somebody tweeted as Castor was talking, just live your life like you're a middle-aged white guy running an impeachment trial. And Gaetz retweeted it saying, on it.
Do you ever think that life is getting a little too postmodern? like between that and like, I really literally came out of teaching 4 hours of adverse possession of chattels today, and like went to Twitter, and it was everyone talking about a Southern lawyer that was looking like a cat in like his Zoom proceedings, and then other people talking about a Southern lawyer making an ass of himself on the Senate floor, and I was like, I just don't know what's going on. Did someone get into a cat suit and go out on the Senate floor? I don't understand.
I loved the cat video, by the way. And so did my cats. Just saying, right?
yeah.
Oh my God.
I do think it was like wild after, I don't know if you guys talked about this before I jumped on, but Raskin was superb. They were all very good, well prepared, thoughtful, and it's not because I agree with them. I mean, like, you can just judge them on points for now, and like, who was effective and who was not effective. And
what was the 13-minute video?
Yeah, so that was great. They did a cut of the video that included a lot of the New Yorker footage and the ProPublica footage and other footage that has been floating around Parler. What they did, but the way that it was put together, maybe because it was long, but it mirrored Trump, the timeline of Trump's speech with the attack on the Capitol, and there was something about them cutting in the C-SPAN footage of the floor where you see people like being interrupted and like ushered out. Look, I'll be honest, like, I cried multiple times through the video in that kind of like, because mobs are really scary. Like, there is something about like that mob mentality of people chanting about killing Mike Pence and erecting the noose and the scaffolding for the noose while they were battering. And then they show, when the woman is shot because they're trying to come through the doors, they show the police officer, the very brave police officer who's trying to lead people away from where he knows Mike Pence is. And it is just arresting in that way where you're like, I don't know whether to cry or throw up. And like that this happened. Like, they did a good job of reminding you what it was like that day, because Republicans have done a pretty good job, along with just the passage of time, of sort of retconning this into I was just asking, we were just asking questions, and it was bad, it wasn't great, but like we should move on. This is over. But you go back to that moment and you are reminded both of your own experience watching it while it was happening, but also just how awful it was, and you didn't even know how awful it was when you were watching it in real time. And so it was this gut punch. And then you coupled that, and I'll say, like, I've met Jamie Raskin once. Ben, you were with me at that thing where we were both there for that thing. And I know that Jamie Raskin's a pretty liberal guy. I don't agree with him on a lot of policy stuff, but the thing about his personal story isn't just that he lost his son. It was also that he had taken his family to the Capitol to be together, to witness this thing as almost like a pick-me-up or a way to be together after this tragic event, to go to the Capitol and witness the peaceful transfer of power. And him talking about his daughter saying, I don't ever want to go back to the Capitol again, and him like getting choked up was just shattering. And just because that is what it was, right? It was this horrible thing that was perpetrated against this thing that we all sort of hold up as majestically. So to go from that to this dude, Castor, who when he started, you're like, is this going somewhere? Like, does he?
And then it takes a really long time to realize that the answer is nope.
Like, oh, like this guy's just doing this, and like, I don't think he knows he's on. I don't think he brought notes. Like his just stories like meander and peter out. He's like, anyway, that was a thing to behold. And then to have it, did you guys catch the end where Schoen started crying?
No, because we were doing this.
Okay, well, I would just like to say sorry. I apologize for just like busting in and ranting, but like Schoen at the end was reading if Cohen or if Castor was like incompetent cop, Schoen came in as shouty cop for their good cop bad cop routine, and so he shouts about the Constitution. His sounded more cogent, but it actually wasn't much better than the other guys. It just like was packaged slightly better, and he had notes, so it was linear. But he, at the end, began reading a poem and a quotation from Lincoln, and also was moved to tears. And I was like, is your soul leaving your body? Like, are you overwhelmed by shame right now? Because that is the only excuse for you crying right now, sir. Like, Jamie Raskin had every right, and you do not. It was appalling.
What poem was he reading? Sarah?
Oh.
Okay.
I was consumed with
what
rage.
was it? Dr. Seuss? What?
No. It was they say it was a poem by Lincoln, but I don't know what it was.
So I think he did a quote by Lincoln, and then I think he read a poem. I think they were two separate things.
So I didn't see the video. I heard the video because I was listening to it on C-SPAN while I was walking a long distance. And so I actually thought the original Raskin presentation was less powerful, probably because I didn't see this video that seems to have moved you a great deal and certainly moved the Greek chorus a great deal. I thought the runaway star of the day was Joe Goose, who just displayed just terrific trial advocacy skills.
He was very good.
And just, walking through the, Raskin took the Constitutional Convention and Goose had the precedents, and he told them as stories in a way that was super compelling. Neither of them is a riveting story, actually. But he really made them work. I thought he was just a terrific, this isn't oral advocacy in the Supreme Court sense, but I thought he did a terrific job as an advocate with a case to make that had some element of fact, some element of law, and some element of, and ultimately comes down to a jurisdictional point. And, I was super impressed with him. This was just the walking down the street, right? I couldn't see Raskin's video and I couldn't see any of the presentation, but I just thought he was really, really good. Paul, what does it say to you in your optimism about ultimate bipartisanship that we picked up a vote today over the last time?
So before you came on, Sarah, I decided I was going to redefine victory as more Republicans voting to convict a member of their own party than in the previous impeachment, which was quite historic. So I would really be very interested to know why Senator Cassidy changed his mind. I hope somebody asks him, and I hope he answers seriously. It at least suggests to me the possibility that some Republican senators are actually listening.
Well, one is listening.
Well, no, just because they didn't change their mind publicly yet doesn't mean they're not listening even now. For example,
but Paul, do you think there's any chance that somebody will vote twice that the proceedings are unconstitutional and then vote to convict?
Maybe.
Really?
Unlikely, but in law, right? It happens all the time. Supreme Court justices say, I would vote to dismiss this case on lack of jurisdictional grounds, but a majority of my fellow members, having decided that there are jurisdictional grounds, I'm voting on the merits, and I vote to reverse, or I vote to affirm. Judges do that all the time, and human beings can actually hold two inconsistent
right, but senators don't.
Well, that I aspire to have senators who are capable of having, of actually are thinking in the alternative. And so they're not that stupid, right? That they can't.
Oh, it's not a question of stupidity. They can understand the point. I just think the best argument for not convicting Trump is the jurisdictional argument, not a factual argument. So if you're
here's my argument. Here's my argument for slight optimism. You didn't see the video. I watched it in its entirety. I thought it was amazingly powerful. And as cut, I am betting that it is something that a lot of the Republican senators have never seen. Never seen in that power. It's something they sort of experienced, but they all ran, right, to an undisclosed location. They didn't see it. They maybe saw a little bit of CNN now and then. They never saw it like that. So I am betting that there are some senators, not a lot, but some senators like Richard Shelby and Toomey and Portman, who's retiring. Well, Portman and maybe Grassley, who are thinking to themselves, Jesus Christ, really? And, if you get to 9, then the dam maybe breaks. Yes, it's optimistic. And if you ask me to bet this house I'm sitting in, which way it would go, I'm not going to bet that way, right? I really am not. Just like I'm not betting that the Nats are going to win the World Series this year. But I'm hopeful that they might. And there's a possibility they might.
What do you think, Sarah? Does picking up one give you hope that you can pick up more over the course of a substantive presentation? Or does picking up one and getting to 56 suggest that the ceiling for conviction is 56?
So I actually thought I was very excited. I was watching the vote because I was like, will we get anybody else? And when I saw I actually missed Cassidy's vote until the end. I must have missed the early alphabet. And then when I saw the numbers, I was like, wait, one of them did switch. This is great. And the reason that I think it's great is that they already took this vote once. And so that means that somebody changed their mind on the merits of watching today. Now, of course, I think watching today that 40 of them should have switched. It was it's wild and insane to me that somebody sits through that presentation and doesn't change. But they did already take this vote. This was essentially a reaffirmation of a vote they've already taken. So they picked up one more. That's good. Here's the thing. I actually, because I'm an optimist and because I'm like Lucy with the football and I recognize this, I am going to take long odds on not 17, but on picking up more Republicans as this goes on. Now, my friend Jonathan Last makes this sort of betting case on this that I find somewhat compelling, which is you either get 6 or you get 17. That there's not really a ton of middle ground because what happens is you have to, Mitch McConnell isn't going to be the 8th vote, but he'd be the 17th vote. And I think that there's something sort of compelling about that.
Yep.
The thing though that is just a thing for me, that I might be naive, but I can never sort of let go of, is the fact that these are human beings and that they have to wake up in the morning and look at themselves in the mirror. And I think that on the merits, this is open and shut, right? This just isn't, there's no controversy. It's one thing for them to vote on a process argument. I mean, Paul just made this case and I think he's absolutely right. They are physically relieved to have a process argument to hide behind. Now they have to take it on its merits. Is it impossible that Rob Portman or somebody else who's retiring sits through this thing and goes, just can't take it. Like, I just can't. Like, look, they have demonstrated depths of cravenness and cynicism that I would never have believed. Even 6 months ago, after all that, even 6 months ago, I wouldn't have believed we'd find ourselves where we are. I just won't close the door to the possibility that they could be moved over this period of time, especially. And here's one of the things. Right after the incitement, the Wall Street Journal editorial page came out and called for Donald Trump's impeachment and removal, like immediately. And a bunch of companies did or whatever. And I am wondering, it'll be interesting to see how like things change in the world as this goes on. Like, does the editorial page come out again? Are there more people from the Federalist Society? Like, does it just build in some way where like an increasing permission structure comes out where they're like, honestly, I can't live with myself and just let this go. And more of the signalers, the top virtue signalers, kind of open the door for it to happen. Like, it's not impossible that happens. It's not likely, but it's not impossible.
I agree. And I'll add one other thing. I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a Politico report today, I think, or yesterday, that said that Trump was looking forward to his acquittal and reasserting his control over the party, right? And reaffirming it and taking it back. If he's going to do that, right, then, there might very well be someone who said, Jesus, if he would just go away, I'd let him off. But if he thinks he's going to come back and mess with us for another 4 years, maybe now is the time we drive the stake into it. I think it's a non-zero chance, but it's not a big chance. But I want to be optimistic. I don't want to die.
I read the 6 votes as saying the cap just went up by 1. I thought it was 55. Now I think it's 56. That's a good day's work. But if we could only add a vote after that presentation, I don't think we're getting much higher than we are. Kate, do you have stuff before we go to audience questions?
Not really. I mean, I'm curious if you had to choose for both, this is for both of you. Well, actually, all 3 of you. If you had to choose, like, would you say that this really was ever about a trial, like this was ever about an outcome, or it was just about a process? Because it feels from like everyone talking that everyone has chalked this up to like not being a show. But I'm calling it a process in a very particular way. I think that's part of what it's doing. It's showing us like all of this stuff, but some of it is propaganda-ish seeming, like, and some of it is really necessary documenting history and putting things in the record. So, like, do you think, was any part of this ever about, like, the outcome, or is the outcome the process?
I'll swing at that first. Almost everything in the Constitution is about the process of getting there.
Yeah.
It's not about the end result. I mean, that's why, I've been so enraged by Trump from the beginning. Not because of the substance of what he wants to do. Some of it I actually sort of liked. Sorry, I'd hate to admit that on this, but some of it I'm a conservative. Some of it I like. But he so destroyed the process in getting there, and the ends just don't justify the means. The Constitution is a process manual for getting to for resolving legitimate disagreements in non-violent, cooperative ways. And it means that everybody has to accept the process at the end. So for me, I never would have accepted the idea that they shouldn't do the impeachment because they would not win in the Senate, right? They had to do the impeachment because they have to validate the process, and we have to go through the process, make the record. It will have an effect. It will have an effect on the elections in 2022, right? And 2024, as it should. It will have an effect on the Republican Party, possibly a bad effect, but, there you go. it will have an effect redounding to history. Andrew Johnson's impeachment was singular in its effect. If you count the skeins of it, it led to the end of Reconstruction, which was a terrible effect, but it had an effect. Bill Clinton's. I wrote yesterday in USA Today about Bill Clinton's impeachment being a little bit of a precursor for Trump's impeachment. I believe those things. I believe that process matters a lot, and I hope that we get what I think is the right result. But I think that you do the process because doing the process is at least part of the result itself.
Sarah, do you have stuff to add to that?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would sort of throw back at Paul, even though I agree with him, is at what point does impeachment kind of become a dead letter? I mean, when you see Jamie Raskin say, if you can't be impeached for this, like, what can you be impeached for? I think, yes, that's correct. That's the correct question to ask. And so when we find, is it, I completely agree. You couldn't allow the precedent of president incites an insurrection the weeks before, his term ends to try to hold on to power and overturn an election. You can't not impeach that. But what does it mean going forward when you have these sort of straight partisan impeachments and that the political party, just because it's Donald Trump's political party, they won't hold him accountable for what is the most concrete, the most clear impeachable offense probably in the history of the country?
I agree with all of that. It should be impeached and he should be convicted and disqualified. Period, full stop, end of story. But I'll at least offer the following as a predictive judgment. The fact that he was impeached and the fact that we now think that 6, 8, 10 Republicans may vote to convict will actually make the recurrence of this less likely. There are some who see his conviction and acquittal as empowering, but I see his impeachment and acquittal as empowering. But I see the impeachment and 58 votes as disempowering. Even though it redounds not so well, there's an escape by the skin of your teeth idea here. I could be wrong. I really could be wrong. And it may be just that impeachment is a dead letter, but I sure as shit hope not.
All right, let's go to the audience questions. Kendall Lowe, the floor is yours.
Ooh, new, right?
That's
Kendall,
right.
have you been on before?
I have not. This is my first time.
Welcome. Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So right outside of Boston. So I'll just read my question just verbatim, just so I don't mess this up. But was the rambling approach employed by Bruce Castor an intentional strategy aimed at directing attention away from, the House manager's opening video? And if so, do you think that was an effective strategy, just given the timeline of their legal representation and kind of what they were working with? Because I think we saw a lot of this kind of similarly with Giuliani throughout this, especially the latter parts of Trump's, kind of term. And I would like to assume some kind of, rational utility maximization that goes on, but, I'm not quite sure.
I'll take a crack at that. I don't think so. I think if you were going to, if you wanted to divert attention from the video and relentlessly focus on the jurisdictional argument because that's your best argument, the way to do that is to get buried in legalism. And you don't have to use that's the other thing, you don't have to use all your time. It's a maximum of 4 hours. So you could give a dry as dust 75-minute exploration of the concept of jurisdiction as, the power of a court to hear a case at all. And they want to dazzle you with videos and everything. But we have a threshold question here. And the threshold question is the power of this tribunal to hear this case at all. And the concept of jurisdiction dates from the 15th century, right? And Like, that would be the way to do it. You put everybody to sleep. By the time you're done, they've completely forgotten that there ever was a video. I think if you go on a long rambling thing that causes everybody watching to say, what is this guy on? That actually heightens the power of the video. Because you're like, Jamie Raskin came in with this incredible video and this really moving thing about his kids, one of whom died, and you're talking about like how you're calling Pat Toomey by his first name and bouncing from subject to subject, and it really heightens the power, I think, of the opposing presentation. But Sarah, Paul, what do you guys think?
I tend to agree with you. I don't think he was a good enough lawyer to have made that a considered choice. Yeah. And I think with you, Ben, that when you're losing an emotion, you go for dust. You go to dry every eye and turn attention away. Or you can fight it with counter emotion, though they didn't have it. If they might have, they could have gone there. So it was, I like your question and the way you pose it. Was he attempting any kind of rational maximization of his potential? And I think the answer is no. I think, frankly, he was thrown into the deep end a week ago, and he was flailing.
I will say, I mean, I never give Trump or his people credit for 8-dimensional chess when, simple incompetence will do, which is, I think, the case here. That being said, I do think it's worth considering whether the headlines tomorrow are about the damning, emotional, searing case provided by the Democrat impeachment managers, or is it about the rambling incoherence of Donald Trump's lawyer, which turns it from this sort of emotional attack that happened on democracy and all of us to this like sort of farce. And I do think I do think that there's danger in that becoming more of the dominant narrative.
That is a good point, because sometimes in the few cases in some cases where I've had not cases to defend and neither good facts nor good law, I've tried to make myself the enemy. I've tried to make the judge hate me and then play myself as the victim of judge hatred. Usually judges are too smart for that. But a really sophisticated lawyer could have been trying to take the attention away from Raskin. And then I guess the goal here for us is to make sure that the mainstream media and CNN all don't spend all their time talking about Castor, but spend it talking about Raskin and the goose.
Can we just start, can we drop the "n" and just call him the goose? That would be a great nickname.
I don't want he needs a nickname, although just the last name alone is a great. I don't know where it's from or what the origin of it is, but it's a fabulous
French.
name.
The "n" sounds like no, like negative of, but I don't know what goose.
Yeah, but it's also like Colorado.
Oh, well,
I don't know. There's a story.
This is America,
there.
Ben.
The Reverend Dr. Hillary Livingston.
I love your
floor is yours.
Normally you have a biblical
yeah, because I keep forgetting to change it from virtual church. So today I hurried up and changed the sign before.
Thanks.
So in lieu of fun. It's a really interesting conversation, as always. So enjoying it. My question is, I know the consensus seems to be that we're hopeful for conviction, but it's probably a long shot. I worry about what the long-term ramifications will be on the government, on our American culture, if the Senate fails to convict. So I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about that. Thank you.
Sarah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing that is. I'll say two things. One, I struggle between my sort of reality-based punditry and what I think we ought to all believe, because I do think our Republicans have benefited this entire time from precariously low expectations, right? Like, they're constantly in this position where, well, nobody's, everybody's acting like a pundit and an analyst and saying no Republicans are going to convict. Well, then there's not that much pressure on them to convict. And I think that that's been like a problem throughout the Trump era. But in terms of your specific question about the impact, like, here's the thing. Republicans right now have a choice. They can put a stake through Donald Trump's political future and convict him, and then he cannot go and disqualify him, and he cannot go start a third party. He doesn't run the Republican Party for the foreseeable future. The name is tarnished. He's basically been excommunicated from the party. Laura Trump has a hard time running for the Senate in North Carolina. Sarah Huckabee Sanders gets dinged, as governor. Like, it would show that the Republican Party was trying to cast them out. If they fail to convict, especially if it's 5 or 6 of like sort of the normal people that you'd expect, the Republican Party is making an affirmative choice that Donald Trump runs the party for the foreseeable future. Mitch McConnell knows this. Mitch McConnell knows he has this chance to get Donald Trump out of his hair for the future. And if they choose not to, they've made a choice. I think part of the reason that people are so doomsday about it is because Kevin McCarthy, hauled his cookies out to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. And there was a real sense that after the insurrection, like, that Mitch McConnell might do something about it. And everybody's been walked back, whether it's by the voters or by internal pressure or whatever it is. And that's why people don't feel like it'll happen. But that is them choosing to let Donald Trump continue to run the party.
So I'll give you a slightly different answer, Hillary, at a kind of different level. I'm going to recommend to everybody who's watching a wonderful book by Professor Larry Kramer. Used to be of Stanford, now is at the Hewlett Foundation. It's called The People's Constitution.
Isn't this the one? But Jeff Rosen was just talking about this book.
He was talking about Kramer, some research that Kramer had done, but it was a paper, I think, not this book.
Oh, you're right. It was a paper by Larry Kramer, but this is the second time we should have Larry on. Why don't we have Larry Kramer on? This is crazy.
You should. So the People's Constitution, I mean, we all talk about, and I just talked about the Constitution as
I should reread this.
As a process document, as an expression of kind of rules and regulations for the nation. Larry's theory that he writes about at length, and for which he marshals a lot of evidence, is that in the end, in the long run, the Constitution is whatever the American people say it is. That we pour into it our prejudices, our beliefs, our foibles, and our successes. And
that it's a much more majoritarian document than.
Wait, is this the people themselves? Right. This is the people themselves.
Yes, you and me, all of us here. That
No. I mean, the title of the book is The People Themselves: Popular Constitutionalism and Judicial Review.
That's it. Okay, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was like, because I was like, you were saying, okay, sorry.
Anyway, that's it. Okay. That's the correct title. I obviously remember it well, but not well enough. And he's absolutely right that in the end, if we do go down this road, not only will the Republican Party have made a short-term bet that Mitch McConnell will have to play out for the next 4 years, but we as a nation will be making a bet that will be playing out for the next 40 or 50 years. And that's why it's quite consequential.
Mr. Burge. In a much brighter blue shirt than usual.
So if the impeachment trial had not been delayed, would the panel expect a different outcome from what we expect now? A week ago, I would have said, yes, I would have expected a conviction if it hadn't been delayed. Now I'm not so sure. What do you guys think?
I think I'd be curious whether people agree with me about this. I think the delay was an expression of the Republican regression to the mean, and the result of that regression to the mean is many fewer Republican senators considering the possibility. And so, yes, it is theoretically possible that you could have caught it right before that happened. But I think the reason that it happened was that, that backing off was already happening to people.
So I'm going to answer that question by asking Sarah a question. Sarah? what caused the regression to the mean? I mean, here we are on January 7th. Everybody's horrified. Mitch McConnell's angry. Even Kevin McCarthy's angry. Nobody except the dead enders like Hawley and Cruz has the stomach. Even Kelly Loeffler changes her frickin' vote. Jim Langford changes his frickin' vote. They all are saying, oh my frickin' God, what have we unleashed? We've got to put this genie in a bottle. What happened between then and just a few days later that they regressed to the mean? Why was that not enough to tip them over? What did they decide? Who did they hear from? Was it money? Was it Trump? What was it?
They heard from voters. That was it. I mean, it is the original calculus. The reason you saw Lindsey Graham say, just take Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's a perfect test case for this question. He says, I'm done with Trump. He is done with him a day or two after. Then he goes to the airport. And a bunch of those guys a bunch of the MAGA guys that were there for the rally start screaming at him at the airport, chase him down. He's getting phone calls. And, this happened to a bunch of them, right? They heard from voters who were mad at them, and that they went and thought, you think the fever's finally breaking. They're finally done. They're all jumping off the Trump train. And then you just look at the impeachment on the House side. I mean, I talked to people that I was certain were going to vote for impeachment, and ultimately they didn't because they were hearing from voters and they were like, I got kids. And they're just too scared. They're scared of these voters, and the voters, look, not all of them. I saw Gallup has a poll out today, and about 30% of Republicans said it is a principled thing to do to convict Donald Trump right now. Now, that can be a glass 30% full. You can be like, that's good. There's a wing of the party that thinks that this is horrendous. But the fact that 70% of the Republican Party think that this is a sham and that it's a witch hunt is also telling, and is the reason that you're not that the Republicans backed off.
All right.
That democracy is dead. It's hopeless, right? If 30% of our fellow citizens are crackers, batshit crazy. Pardon, can I say that?
You can say whatever you want.
FCC does not control this podcast.
Okay, I know that, but Ben does, and Kate does it. I don't want to offend them.
Have you heard them? But hold on, you can't say that. You can't say that, Paul, because I was actually just sorry. I was off camera for 1 second because I just had to grab some water. But there is this.
I just like that we're just having a conversation as though the fifth pane is not occupied by a cat lawyer.
It's already
go on. Don't let me interrupt you, Kate.
That is the most adorable. Okay, so hi, David.
That's the cat filter from the video.
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen the video, that's the cat filter from the video. Yes. And for people in the thing who were asking, some lawyers kid put the cat video on, cat filter on, and he couldn't get it off, so he did an entire argument with the cat filter
and explained it to the judge.
Oh God. I love this so much. It's so soon and it's already happening. The internet is an amazing thing. But no, I'm serious for 1 second. Paul, okay, so is it bad for democracy? Because this is such a Madisonian point. This is such a point about factions versus the majority. This is such a part about. So I was thinking this is right as Sarah was saying this, isn't this what we want? Is vocal motivated voters going and bothering their duly elected representatives to
preferably without threats, though.
Okay, not with threats. Yes, that is true. But come on.
So now you're asking a really deep question, and I'll give you my serious deep answer. The entire premise of liberal Western democracy, small L, small W, small d, is a bet on human rationality. We believe in free markets because we believe that, in total, rational choices produce wealth maximization, not in individual decisions, but in groups. We believe in democracy because we believe that, individual voters are crazy, but as a group, we're not. We believe in free speech because we think that in the long run, truth beats falsity, right? That, we can beat true speech, false speech with true speech.
Mm-hmm.
I am afraid that the 70% Sarah cites tells me that empirically, my assumption of human rationality that undergirds liberal Western democracy is false, is wrong to fact, and that there is at least a significant fraction of our fellow populace who are not rational decision makers, who believe in Pizzagate and pedophilia, who believe in QAnon conspiracies and really believe them, who believe in anti-vax.
Empirics backs up that these people are not rational decision makers. Like in the rational idea of like an economist would define rationality, or like. So
what do you do when your underlying theory is wrong? When the thesis on which you base an entire political movement is wrong?
Well, I'll tell you what Michael Seidman told me when we got to this point in constitutional law class at Georgetown, like in 2012, and Michael Seidman, critical legal scholar, she was like, well, this is the best we got. Like, it's the best we've got. Gotta keep going forward, one foot in front of the other. This is like all we've got. And I know, like, you kind of like nod, but like I actually think that's I am there with you.
That's a fair answer.
Like, but
it's
like,
democracy is the worst government form of government except for all the others, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, David Botts.
Paul took a dark turn there. He went from being an optimist to being like the republic is dead. Democracy has no future.
But meanwhile, David went from being a human with a cat face to a human with a cat face holding a cat. The floor is yours, David.
Let me see the cat, David. I would love to see what's his or her name.
This is Lloyd.
Lloyd is the best. Well, actually not the best, but pretty good compared to the other cat.
Lloyd is awesome. Paul, I'm sorry, I have to ask, what kind of camera do you have? Because your picture is chef's kiss sweet. I mean, it's a beautiful picture.
Oh, really? Well, this is a Razer Keo camera, and I'm using a Blue Snowball microphone.
Okay.
Oh, your microphone's also good. That's good to know.
Yeah, it's a great picture. So
thank you.
I'm Dave. I am not a cat, and I'm really sorry. I can't fix it. I don't know how. But my very serious question is, who's your favorite witnesses to call for the trial? And Paul has his hand up, so we should recognize him first.
Paul?
If I were actually trying to win this trial and I thought that I had any chance of winning it, my first or last witness would be the widow of Officer Sisnick, right? Oof. My second witness would be whoever I figured out could actually tell me about how Donald Trump was cheering on the mob in the White House, from the White House as he was watching. Mark Meadows.
What was Donald Trump doing?
Mike Pence.
Yes,
I would love for somebody.
He's my third witness.
Somebody asked Mike Pence, did the president ever call and check on your safety when he was tweeting during the insurrection, continuing to incite the mob against you? Like, somebody get that guy on the stand.
So, and then my fourth, fifth, and sixth witnesses are three people who are from the mob, who I testify under immunity, and come and say, I came because my president called me to do it.
All right. Sarah, do you have witness recommendations other than Mike Pence?
Yeah, I agree with those. The cop that I would call, there was an interview with one of the cops, and it was the guy that they beat with the flagpoles.
Yeah.
Shortly after.
Thank you and fuck you for being here.
Yeah, but he also talked about as the mob was beating him and they were saying, shoot him with his own gun. And he just started crying out, I have children. And I've never forgotten that because I think about how traumatizing it must be for that. Like, people talk about there were, people, some of the people were killed at the actual insurrection. 2 cops have committed suicide subsequently. 140 people, yes, were injured. But people don't think about the scars that these people would carry, how it was a harrowing experience for them there. And I do think that there is something despicable about treating this like a thing you just move on from. And I think hearing from the people who will bear those emotional scars is something that these Republican senators should have to face.
I agree. That's why I would call the widow, but yours is just as good, if not
Tony
better.
Kava, hello.
Momo! Hi, Momo.
Cats
Hey,
are for
Momo?
suckers.
Momo gets the last question
Oh
today.
my God, I love this dog.
Before
Okay, great.
before you ask a question, can I hijack this briefly? I
Sure.
have two
Yeah,
cats.
please.
They're named
Go get your
Luke and Leia, right?
Aw.
Yeah, go
They've
ahead.
returned?
Luke and
Are they-
Leia. Oh my
Are they
God.
brother and sister?
They're twins. And they're
Wasn't
and
one
they're-
of them
and-
missing?
What?
Wasn't
Yes,
one of-
back now, happily.
Oh,
That was
good.
terrifying. I was
Yes, it
terrified.
was.
Thank you for your kind words, by the way, Paul. Like, I really
welcome.
appreciated that. That was very nice. It's like a terrifying feeling. Anyway.
So here's the question. The Roomba in the house is named R2D2. So you get the theme.
Yeah.
If we buy a third cat, a little kitten to go with Luke and Leia, drop it into the comments. What should I name her or him?
Ooh,
Or
a poll,
excellent.
then.
BB-8.
A poll.
Tony
BB-8.
Tony
Good.
Kava, you get the
Yeah.
last question while people are recommending kitten
Yeah.
names.
I would recommend BB-8 would be my recommendation.
I'm
for
actually
the cat's
saving that
name.
for the pool cleaner.
Oh, there you go.
I love this.
Hey, just quickly, I could see calling witnesses like, the normal people, the guards, the police, the wives of the deceased. But I don't see what would stop Mark Meadows from committing perjury, because who's going to call him on it? And he'll just go up there and lie. So I'm not sure what good it would do to call Pence or, any Republican up there, honestly. Unless you can tell me that there's a mechanism by which they can be.
Well, there is a mechanism, which is that,
Charged.
there are people that might contradict them, and people are actually inhibited about lying under oath. And they could expect, if it came out that they lied, to be prosecuted pretty aggressively. So I think, you can never ignore the chance of perjury, but it's generally not considered a reason to avoid calling somebody.
Yeah. So I guess my real question is, it seemed to me, I'm not a lawyer, but that rather than a logical defense, Trump's legal team strategy seems to be to just hold the Trump base watching on TV so that they can hold at least 17 Republican senators from bolting, give them an excuse to basically stare at their notes and then acquit. So I guess the question is, talking about witnesses, would witnesses force Trump's lawyers to defend based on facts? Would video evidence force Trump's base watching on TV to consider what it is they're supporting? And that's the question.
Sarah, what do you think of that?
Oh, actually, can I I want Sarah to answer, but I want to say something really quickly, which is that about evidence, like generally, and the effect that evidence has on jurors or people, like from a cognitive science perspective, which is that there are various levels at which people feel like what they're being told is true, and the lowest confidence they would have is something being told to them via text, and then or seeing something written down, and then there would be various things from that is okay, you heard it yourself, you observed it yourself. Video gives us that next level, but the thing about video is that there is editing, and there are ways to manipulate video that we can't tell and are not easy to see anymore. But I would just say that from a cognitive perspective, there is one level above that to change people's minds, which is in-person conversations or in-person dialogue. And that has been the most convinced, the biggest way that people have had for the longest time a change in their opinion as measured over time, which is people go door to door and talk to people about their views on various things and change their mind. And then what I was just trying to say is that I don't think it would have a very I don't think it's going to have such a strong impact on the base at this point. I don't think that they're particularly primed. I think that there's been multiple things that have happened on video that like they have not, that there's like a solid base around like that 30% that's just not going anywhere. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the base says that that's Antifa. They don't dispute
right, exactly.
Happened, but they just say, well, that wasn't us. It was a false flag operation by Antifa. Look, here's the thing, though. Most Americans are not watching this trial. I mean, if there's one thing I learned doing all the focus groups and talking to regular voters, it is that like the amount of their political passivity. People like us who follow politics obsessively, we think about all the evidence and think like, well, that's very compelling. Like, of course, that would convince a regular human. And like, what I keep having to remind people of is like, they're just not watching. They're not paying attention.
Yes.
You know, the extent to which we agonize over like the RNC convention, the DNC convention, did it move people? I asked a bunch of focus groups, like, did you watch the conventions? And like one person out of, 30 even watched them or cared about them. So people aren't watching them. That is why I think there's danger in the narrative, right? Because what you want is for there to be kind of a big narrative that's in all the papers. That's, it's why people do things for clips that get shared on social media, because that's the stuff that sort of seeps into the popular understanding of what's going on. And it's why if everybody focuses on the story about one of the lawyers being an imbecile, they're not getting the story about how devastating, what happened was. And I think that, but I do think that there was a lot, like, I do think that video that they put forward is going to get shared a lot more than if they had made any kind of normal prosecutorial kind of case. And I think that was smart to do. It's why they fought to get video in there, because I think that has and again, you're not trying to convince everybody. Like that's just like not the goal. The goal is to convince enough people that Republicans have been completely derelict. I have a piece today in the Bulwarks, hold them all accountable, because it wasn't just Trump. I just want to make this point just because it's very much on my mind, right? Not Mark Meadows, Kevin McCarthy, Madison Cawthorn, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, like these guys spent weeks amplifying Trump's claim that there was something fraudulent about the election. And the best that we can hope for, I think, coming out of this impeachment trial is that, it was good that Trump's lawyers admitted that Joe Biden was elected president. The one thing that we can get out of this is the idea that like they were lying and that it was a free and fair election. Like that's the thing, hopefully, because that's the existential threat to democracy, right? That people believe that an election was stolen. Like just these people are going to jail, right? The people who attacked the Capitol, they're going to go to jail. Donald Trump is going to be impeached because there's a mechanism for accountability, however flawed, for the president of the United States. There's no mechanism for accountability for Kevin McCarthy saying, yes, Donald Trump won this election in a landslide, or Madison Cawthorn saying, yeah, you could lightly threaten them a little bit, or Louis Gohmert saying you got to have violence in the streets. There's not an immediate mechanism, right? The next thing is their elections. It's the only time you can hold them accountable. And for a lot of them, they live in places where there's just not going to be accountability, if you're straightforward about it. But that's why shame is so important. It's why this impeachment trial is so important. It's why making it hard for companies to donate to these people, making it hard for some percentage of Republican voters to continue to support these people, because they have disqualified themselves, certainly in my opinion, from ever holding political power again. And so our best bet is to convince just enough people to make them a rump party and keep political power out of their hands in the near future, because they're a dangerous party right now.
I agree with Sarah, and simply say that the main goal out of this impeachment proceeding for me is to provide enough fodder for 100,000 commercials that Sarah is going to cut between now and 2022. And I think that the single most important thing that can happen in the next 2 years is to make sure that those of the president's supporters who are up for re-election in swingable states like Ron Johnson lose, right? There are too many gerrymandered House members. We can't get at them, right? So I'm not going to take out after Kevin McCarthy, much as I'd love to, because he's in a Trump plus whatever, 20-something jurisdiction. But Ron Johnson is in a swingable state, and he's a moron, and he should be punished for his sycophancy. Josh Hawley is up in 24, right?
Yep.
He should lose, right? And that would be good. You do enough of those. You take the open seats in Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, and that's the statement that makes this happen. The only statement that makes this come back.
We're going to leave it there. Paul, Sarah, thanks for joining us on less than an hour's notice today. And
do you know what I have tomorrow?
Don't be like Bruce Castor.
Oh yeah. No, I have a day off tomorrow, Ben. Or unless we do it at 4.
Well, I think it's a complicated question. Should we do it at 4? Because
I gotta jump, guys.
Okay,
I'm gonna jump too. Take care, guys. Thanks.
See ya. Because we have to, we have the impeachment trial will be running, and I have to watch it.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So, I am happy to do it at 4 if you prefer.
Then maybe my streak ends tomorrow.
It's up to you.
I feel really sad about it. Okay, let me think about it.
Sleep on it. We'll decide tomorrow.
But you have to be watching at 4. Then I feel bad taking away from that.
No, but I'll probably still have to be watching at 5 too. So it can do it either way. We did book David Chris, and if he can't do 4, then we have to do 5. So you tell me what you prefer tomorrow. I'll see if it works with David Chris. We'll still be impeaching the president. It'll all start either 22 or 21 hours and 49 minutes from now.
President.
And until then, Kate?
We don't have fun anymore, but Donald Trump is a former president.
That's true. And we have more days of impeachment coverage just like that.